Hey, I'm Ed Bolian from VINwiki, and we are back to talk about the top 10 most iconic collector cars of a decade. And today it is the 2000s. I'm here in downtown Miami at Curated with John Temerian. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for being here.
Always a pleasure, and been a very, very special trip this time. And today we're going to talk about the cars of the 2000s that most define the decade. Now, of course, there's many ways to look at the best or top or whatever collector cars of any time period, but we're going to have our normal supercar bend. But these are the cars that years and years from now, if you heard that somebody had a great 2000s car collection, this is what you'd find when you walk into the warehouse or open up the garage or just go to the meetup where they're pulling something out. And so I hope at least, that you can't say 2000 supercars without a Bugatti Veyron.
My opinion is that if the Countach is the greatest car of the 80s, the McLaren F1 is the greatest car of the 1990s, the Bugatti Veyron is the greatest car of the 2000s. And that's because it had such an impact. I mean, it shocked the world. The price tag, the horsepower, the top speed, and the amount of money that was invested into the project. I don't think anyone has ever done that again or anything like that. There you go. I said it.
I appreciate it.
It's the greatest car. You cannot have a supercar collection or a hypercar collection. Forget we're talking about the 2000s for a second without a Bugatti Veyron.
I have to agree, and I have voted with my pocketbook, or at least my credit score, recently into a Bugatti Veyron, and I am loving every second of it. And I would never have found that car if it weren't for our sponsor today, Auto Tempest. For years and years, I have typed Bugatti Veyron into Auto Tempest to see if one got cheap enough. And fortunately, of the 14 Grand Sports that they brought out, they thought they were going to build 150 of them. They only built 58. Only 14 came of them to the U.S., and 6 of them have been for sale in the last year, which drove the prices momentarily down to something that I could swing with the help of Premier Financial Services. And so I have got one in the garage after, well, I will once I road trip it up because I'm still down here.
Man.
Thank you.
What an
I couldn't have
accomplishment.
done it without your
What
help.
a surreal accomplishment. That's all I can say.
Check out Auto Tempest to find your dream car. It worked for me. It can work for you. Autotempest.com. All the cars, one search. The other one, I don't think we can omit, is a Murcielago. And now this will sound extremely self-serving. Me talking into the internet for the last decade will certainly sound self-serving in that regard, but I don't think I'm wrong. The Mercy belongs.
I think, again, it's video games. You have how many hip-hop videos and hip-hop artists with these cars, the celebrity factor. And again, it just was such a period piece. The design, I think, has aged perfectly. It's usable, it's fast, it does everything right. I think it's one of the greatest cars of the generation. And again, you know, when talking about the more rarer versions like the Reventone, you know, I look back on the Reventone as such a statement from Lamborghini, and I think you cannot have a 2000 supercar collection without a Murcielago.
For sure. Whether it's an SV, an LP640, e-gear car, manual car,
Doesn't matter.
they're all awesome. I have to say that peak for me is the 640 manual Roadster. I love mine so very much. I enjoy driving it in many ways more than the Bugatti. I enjoy it more than just about anything else. When Pedro from Revs Institute was driving my car while I was driving their F1, he was in awe of how good the car sounds, of how good the brakes
That's
are,
a big statement.
of how fast the car is.
That's
but
a big
it
statement.
doesn't take anything away from cars that are more well received, more well respected, more renowned than a Mercy, but it really doesn't get much better to drive. Now,
I agree.
Many would argue, including our good friend Doug DeMuro, that the better car to drive is a Porsche Carrera GT, and I think that most certainly belongs on this list.
Well, you're talking about a car that was basically built because a Le Mans development program was canceled. So a real race car for the street. Again, they couldn't give them away when the cars were new. But I think now, looking back, we appreciate just how far advanced, just how exciting the car is, how visceral it is to drive. And I think it's probably maybe the greatest car that Porsche's ever made.
I think that there's certainly a very good argument to be made there. The values have reflected it. And a car that's not all that rare by the standards of some of the cars we're comparing it to, but very commoditized, very well respected, and I think endlessly has a great value potential.
I agree.
Obviously, target your PTS cars to satisfy the Porsche crazies, but that is a thing. Certainly in that vein of the hypercar world of that era, you got to have an Enzo, and even better yet, an MC12.
The Enzo, it's the last V12 from Ferrari that is not a hybrid based for their supercar series. Obviously, they made the SP3 Daytona, but that's an iconic car. And again, the look of that car, the design of that car, Ken Okayama, the Japanese designer, that just I think it just shocked the world when that car came out. The design inspired from Formula One cars of its period. The Enzo's just so cool. Limited production. You have to have an Enzo. And then listen, if you've got the money, an MC12, basically an Enzo that the roof comes off, and a homologation car as well, which is very, very exciting and important for looking back on history.
We just in the last 6 months have seen MC12s pass Enzos in value, and that's something that anybody who pays attention to these markets has been puzzled by
Yes,
for so
agreed.
long. There's no world in which an MC12 isn't more special,
Yes,
isn't worth having, and so
agreed.
seeing those fall in, maybe it doesn't give you as much credit in your Ferrari collection for ordering new stuff, but who cares by the
Agreed.
Maserati?
Agreed.
Now, one car that a few short years ago probably wouldn't have made the list, but now couldn't be ignored is a Zonda. And the Zondas, lived a long, long time, hard to get into the US, somewhat ignored from a real mainstream collector perspective, but nothing has more upward value velocity, NVIDIA style right now, than a Pagani Zonda. 10 years ago, they're less than 1 million. 5 years ago, they're less than 2. Today, they're not less than 10. Some of them are not less than 20. They're probably headed for 100. And it's just crazy. Now, there's a lot of factors. There's a ton of cars that are owned by the factory. But Pagani Zondas right now are so far beyond on fire. They are stratospheric in the trajectory.
I agree. And I think, again, with what Pagani's doing with the brand today and the exclusivity and all these different things, it is further heating up that fire. Manual V12, a jewel to look at. And I just see, the Zonda, the reason the company is where it is today is because of the Zonda. And at one point, you could buy one cheap.
You could,
I mean,
absolutely.
all relative, you could buy one cheap. So it's just,
yeah, there were $250,000
yeah,
Zondas at a
yeah,
moment. Yep.
yes,
What was Wyclif's car going to be? Maybe 300.
300,
One with a maybe not the most legitimate U.S. title, but a U.S. title nonetheless. It had a
Exactly.
license plate on it, so that certainly belongs. And alongside it, without question, are the Koenigsegg's of the era: the CC8S, the CCR, CCX, CCXR. You've transacted a bunch of these cars lately,
Yeah.
and I mean, also a car that's gone from easily under 1 million to probably over 3. It's not my favorite car to drive on anything other than a gigantic road with great visibility, but still a wonderful thing, especially the manual cars.
Yes, and I think it's a testament to Christian Koenigsegg's just genius. He's constantly reinventing the wheel, which is hard to do in the automotive space today. And that car will forever be important to the history of Koenigsegg as they grow and expand and deliver. I think they're talking about delivering 500 cars over the next couple of years, which is wild.
And amazing, and
Yes,
truly a
yes,
huge achievement in a
yes,
time where it is harder than ever to make a car legal anywhere in the world.
yes.
He has made extraordinary cars
Agreed.
legal. Now, we talked about what the Pagani and what the Koenigsegg meant in the future of the company. A car that did not have such a favorable bearing on its company's future, which ended shortly after it, was a Spiker. Again, a car that I love and personally enjoyed so many miles on mine, but Spiker did not exist after about 2011, 2012. But I think these cars, 260, 270 cars, ultra cool, ultra rare, ultra bespoke. They fit in perfectly with my look like you won the lottery 10 or 20 years ago approach to life,
Yes.
and I love it.
And I agree. I mean, listen, I don't think it doesn't come to your mind immediately, but you can't create this list without a spiker. The impact in different movies, different celebrity ownerships, all these different things. And you look back and they made such a massive splash and statement. Formula One team, racing Le Mans, all these things, and then they disappeared. It is almost the vector of its time. Fast forward, but they're just so well built. They're so cool. I love them. So I think it's a must on this list.
I love it as the vector of its time rather than the poor man's Pagani. Both are acceptable, feel free, but that's it. Now,
Exactly.
another car that I know we both love is a Mercedes McLaren SLR, whether it's a standard version, a Roadster, a 722, 722S, or a Sterling Moss. They have to be on this list. They mean so much, more so with respect to McLaren than what it was for Mercedes, but it paved the way for the resurgence of McLaren as a brand,
Yes.
and I think it just cannot be ignored.
I agree. And again, such a cool piece looking back, and you think of again, it's like the Carrera GT. It was very difficult to sell at first, and now they're very much appreciated and so important for McLaren's brand.
Now, probably the least rare car on our list would be a Ford GT. The 0506 cars certainly have cemented a place in everybody's hearts, but with over 4,000 of them, it's really amazing to me how much enthusiasm has grown for them when they aren't that terribly hard to find. But I think Bring a Trailer has done more than anybody else to really
Yes.
commoditize these
Yeah,
vehicles.
I
There's,
agree.
every single
I
week there's
agree.
a
You
new
know they're liquid.
delivery
Yeah.
mile car running,
Yes.
and it's amazing. We loved pulling the one recently out of the barn in Georgia, or the hoarder's garage, or whatever we want to call it. And I think that there's not many cars that are more iconic, more beautiful, and more significant, and also that won't cut your head off as you shut the door. But you can't go wrong.
They're just perfect. They do everything right. They're super usable. The retro styling was executed perfectly, so I love them.
Another American car for the list, I think, has to round it out at the top 10 is a Saleen S7. I love what these cars are doing. They have also 3-4x'd in value in the last decade. Well deserved, super cool. Again, nothing stops you in your tracks like something like a Vector or a Saleen. It's just so good.
And I think, when you go back to that period and you go to magazines and toys and all these different things that have an impact, I wasn't the biggest fan originally of the S7.
No.
I was not at all. But I think, again, looking back now, you see like its importance in this period. And it's something that if you're building a supercar collection of the 2000s, it's a must.
Absolutely. So those are our top 10. There's a ton of bubble cars, and please let us know in the comments what you think belonged on the list. I love a Lotus Exige, Elise. I think they are so significant in this entry-level, daily usable track
Yes.
perfection car.
Yes,
An
agreed.
Exige S260, ultra rare, perfect to drive. I love them once I'm in. Not the easiest car to get in. I think cars that we're going to see explode in value in the next 5 years are the TVR Tuscan
Yes.
and TVR Cigaris. The Swordfish tie-in, the
Video
Gran
game,
Turismo,
yes,
everything else
yes,
is
yes.
so good.
Yes.
One car that I know you're loving, I saw one with a Euro plate downstairs, is a 550 Barchetta. They're just turning 25. They are going to triple in value. They are so perfect to drive.
It does everything right. It's a V12, open roof, manual transmission. It's fast, it's comfortable, it's numbered, they're limited. I think it's one of the last cars that Ferrari produced with actual numbered, not just like one of 399 or one of 499.
Yes.
So I agree. I think these cars are going to double and triple over time.
Now, I know there's plenty of you out there that are throwing your paint to sample phone cases on the ground right now, but of course, you have to recognize the Porsche 996s and 997s of the decade. Whether it's the GT3,
Yes.
the GT2, the RSs, they are wonderful. They are plenty collectible. The only reason I think they don't break into the top 10 is that for all of these, they are easily decided as being the right car from the moment, from the brand,
Yes.
and you'd be right in so many different options of what
course.
911 to put in here.
Yes.
And so that's why I think it's not necessarily the most iconic, because it's
Yes.
the most diverse. But they're all right. I love a 996 GT2. I love a
Agreed.
996 GT3. I love
Agreed.
an '08 orange or green RS. You can't go wrong there,
Yep.
but maybe not the most iconic.
Agreed.
The same way a manual Gallardo or a manual R8. Plenty collectible. We're going to see them go all the right directions value-wise.
Yes.
And I love a Z8.
And I think listen, I was just thinking about, when that car was first shown in the James Bond movie.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful. Again, usable.
Yes.
And there's a massive following for them. They're so period correct.
Oh, absolutely. And you can put an E46 and an E39 right there next to it.
Yes.
The 2000s were an amazing era of cars. And so I hope you've enjoyed our list. I've certainly enjoyed the thought process alongside you to think of it. But let us know which ones we missed. We always love to continue the discussion in the comments. Also, please check out our sponsor, Auto Tempest, at the link in the description below. Autotempest.com gives you all the cars from all the major listing sites across the whole internet in the same place. I have spent many mornings finding my next car there, more successfully lately than usual, but I know that you can find whatever it is that you're looking for, and also see how is the world appreciating your dream car as the values go up. There's no easier way to find it than the asking prices, and there's no easier way to find the asking prices than on Auto Tempest.